Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Huria Amir. Today we are going to have the last lecture of CNS, although this portion is not actually the part of CNS, it is part of special senses, but we are doing it along with central nervous system. Now what we are going to learn is about the vestibular sensations, how the maintenance of equilibrium that is being done in our body. Now we are going to learn in detail about the vestibular apparatus. Now what is it? The vestibular apparatus is the sensory organ for detecting the sensations of equilibrium. It is encased in a system of bony tubes and chambers, which is located in the petrous portion of the temporal bone, which is known as the bony labyrinth. There is presence of membranous tubes also, and inside this bony labyrinth we have a membranous labyrinth. Now the membranous labyrinth is actually the functional part of the vestibular apparatus. The membranous labyrinth is composed mainly of the cochlea, ductus cochlearis, 3 semicircular canals, and 2 large chambers, which are the utricle and saccule. They are all the integral portions of equilibrium mechanism. So if you are being asked that what is the composition of membranous labyrinth, it is composed of cochlea, 3 semicircular canals, and 2 chambers, which are utricle and saccule. Now cochlea is actually the major sensory organ for hearing and has little to do with that of the equilibrium, but it is lying there in the membranous labyrinth, which is inside the bony labyrinth. Now maculae. Maculae are the sensory organs of utricle and saccule for detection of orientation of head with respect to gravity. It is located on the inside surface of each utricle and saccule. It is a small size, mainly in the horizontal plane on the inferior surface of the utricle, and plays an important role in determining orientation of the head when the head is upright. Conversely, the macula of the saccule is located mainly in the vertical plane, and it signals head orientation when the person is lying down. So we should be knowing when the head is upright, the orientation is the task of macula of utricle, and when the person is lying or head is lying, the signals they are to be carried by way of macula of saccule. You can see the membranous labyrinth, the composition. You can see that there is saccule, there is utricle, there is ductus cochlearis, there is presence of 3 semicircular canals. So this is actually how the membranous labyrinth looks like. Each macula is covered by a gelatinous layer in which many small calcium carbonate crystals called statoconia are embedded. Also in the macula there is presence of thousands of hair cells. These project cilia up into the gelatinous layer. The bases and size of the hair cells synapse with sensory. In each macula, each of the hair cells is oriented in different direction, so that some of the hair cells are stimulated when the head bends forwards, some are stimulated when the head bends backward, and others are stimulated when it bends to one side, or so forth. Therefore, a different pattern of excitation occurs in macular nerve fibers for each orientation of the head in the gravitational field. The 3 semicircular canals and the ducts contained within them are named as lateral, anterior, and posterior. These canals, as well as ducts, are arranged at right angles to one another, so they represent all the three planes in space. The anterior duct is vertical in direction. The posterior also is vertical, but is directed backwards. Again, you can see how they are lying at right angle to one another at three different planes. The lateral duct is directed horizontally and laterally. The lateral semicircular ducts of two sides are in the same plane and form one synergic pair. The left anterior duct is in the same plane as the right posterior duct, and those two forms the second synergic pair. The third synergic pair consists of the left posterior and the right anterior duct. The semicircle via a dilated opening called the ampulla. The anterior and posterior duct open at their second ends into the utricle by a common opening. Each of the three ampullae through which each semicircular duct communicates with the utricle independently contains a sensory end organ called crista ampullaris, from which a vestibular nerve arises and carries efferent impulses to vestibular nuclei in the medulla. The utricle and the saccule communicate with each other through the ductus endolymphaticus, while the saccule communicates with the cochlear duct through the ductus reunions. Crista. The crista is a semicircular fold of tissue attached to the external wall of ampulla. Its free edges projects into the lumen of ampulla and carries the sensory epithelial cells, which are tall columnar neuroepithelial hair cells. The hair cells are supported by the sestentacular cells. These cells have stiff hair processes that project into the firm gelatin lies across the lumen of ampulla, reaching its roof and acts as an obstruction or diaphragm to the flow of endolymph from the ducts to the utricle or in the reverse direction. Thus, the movements of fluid from the duct to ampulla will press on cupula and deflect it towards the utricle. The hairs originating from each hair cells are of two types, a single kinocilium and a large number of stereocilia. Kinocilium. It is the longest hair and is in relation to the basal body. It is a true cilium but is non-motile. It has a central pair of microtubules surrounded by 9 pairs of microtubules, each end in a club-shaped fashion. You can see the kinocilium having composition of microtubules and the upper edges having the club-shaped appearance, and then you can see below there is stereocilia having filamentous attachments. The stereocilia, they are small in size, they are large in number, like 30 to 150 in number in comparison to kinocilium, and they are easily differentiated by electron microscopy. Now, each of these cilia has an inner core of actin that is surrounded by various isoforms of myosin. The hair cell also receives the efferent nerve fibers. The kinocilia of the cells of horizontal crista are always located at peripheral margins of the cells or to the sides towards the utricle. The cynocelia of the posterior and superior cristae are on the canal side. The resting membrane potential of the hair cell is about 60 millivolts. The hair cells, which act as receptors, respond bidirectionally. When, due to movement of copula, the stereocilia are displaced towards the kinocilium, there is depolarization and there is an increased discharge of nerve impulses. When the stereocilia are displaced away from the kinocilium, there is hyperpolarization and discharge rate is decreased. The ionic mechanism of the production of action potentials in these hair cells is the same as in those present in the organ of Corti. What is the function of utricle and circule in the maintenance of static equilibrium? It is especially important that hair cells are all oriented in different directions in the maculae of the utricles and circules, so that with the different positions of the head, the different hair cells they become stimulated. The patterns of stimulation of different hair cells apprise the brain of the position of the head with respect to the pull of gravity. In turn, the vestibular, cerebellar, and reticular motor nerve systems of the brain excite appropriate postural muscles to maintain the proper equilibrium. This utricle and circule system functions extremely effectively for maintaining equilibrium when the head is in the near vertical position. Indeed, a person can determine as little as half a degree of disequilibrium when the body leans from the precise upright position. Detection of linear acceleration by the utricle and circule maculae. Now, when the body is suddenly thrust forward, that is, when the body accelerates, the statoconia, which have greater mass inertia than the surrounding fluid, fall backward on the hair cell cilia, and information of disequilibrium is sent into the nervous centers, causing the person to feel as though he or she were falling backward. This automatically causes the person to lean forward until the resulting anterior shift of the statoconia exactly equals the tendency for the statoconia to fall of proper equilibrium and leans the body forward, no farther. Thus, the maculae operate to maintain equilibrium during linear acceleration in exactly the same manner as they operate during static equilibrium. The maculae do not operate for the detection of linear velocity. When runners first begin to run, they must lean far forward to keep from falling backward because of the initial acceleration. But once they have achieved running speed, if they were running in a vacuum, they would not have to lean forward. When running in air, they lean forward to maintain equilibrium only because of air resistance against their bodies. In this instance, it is not the maculae that make them lean, but air pressure acting on pressure end organs in the skin, which initiate appropriate equilibrium adjustments to prevent falling. Detection of head rotation is the work, or you can say the task, of semicircular ducts. When the head suddenly begins to rotate in any direction, that is known as angular acceleration, the endolymph in the semicircular canals, because of the inertia, tends to remain stationary while the semicircular ducts they turn. This causes relative fluid flow in the ducts in the direction opposite to the head rotation. A typical discharge signal from a single hair